Trey Mancini, emergency podcast. The Marlins, they make a move. It is not a major league deal. I repeat, it is not a major league deal, but minor league deal for Trey Mancini, an invite to spring, and in reality, a pathway to a roster spot on league minimum. The Marlins and Peter Bendix have played a blinder, or have they? This is Locked On Marlins.
You are Locked On Marlins, your daily podcast on the Miami Marlins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings from England. Welcome to Locked On Marlins. It's your daily Marlins podcast. I'm your host, of course, Peter Pratt. Hit me up on X at Miami Marlins _UK. If you are listening to the pod, of course, hit subscribe and welcome. Thanks for making Locked On Marlins your first listen. There is a YouTube channel as well, guys. If you didn't know that by now, I'm sure you do. But the YouTube channel is called Locked On Marlins. Hit subscribe over there too and come and join us. I want to say us. I'm talking about Sean, not Millerick. No. Sean Barrett is back. I am going Sean heavy. How many other Seans do I know? I'm not sure, but I'm throwing it out now. If your name is Sean and you are a Marlins fan, message me straight after this episode. But Sean Barrett, the UK GOAT, in the house. How are we doing, brother?
I'm doing better now, Pete. Better and wider in the week. So, yeah, I've got some competition snap at my heels. So, yeah, better bring it today, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. Listen, let me just call out. There's only one UK GOAT, so we're going to start there. But there's at least two Seans. However, the spelling is different. So, yeah, let's see how many other Seans we can get on and what are the spellings we can get of Sean. Anyway, great to have you on, mate, and glad you're feeling a touch better than you were earlier in the week, for sure. This episode is brought to you by our good friends over at FanDuel. Yes, sir. And you can make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com/locked-on to get started. And we have a packed agenda, super packed. For those that are watching and have the graphics package to help them, they will see it is packed. I've run out of bullet points. I've run out of space to add bullet points. That's how packed the agenda is. Yes, we are talking Trey Mancini. This is a Trey Mancini emergency podcast. So we will be talking Trey Mancini. We also will be talking how the Marlins are taking calls. There's a new Barry Jackson Herald article out there. We love it when they drop. The Marlins are taking calls on their pitching, but not actively shopping them, it seems. So we'll talk about that. The catching situation. What's going on there? Peter Bendix has money to spend. He has money. But at this point is maybe calling out that that's inefficient and maybe not the right use of money in this. So we're going to talk about that. Rhys Hoskins has signed. How does that impact Garrett Cooper? Yeah, it's interesting. But how does that set the market for Jorge Soler? And what does that mean for the Marlins? And as well, old friend Matt Moore resigns with the Angels. So we'll talk about that as well. Tons to get into. But let's start with the breaking news. Trey Mancini signs a minor league deal. Boy, oh boy. Sean Barrett, your immediate reaction to this one, both in terms of the player, the signing, and the type of contract as well, specifically.
I mean, for me, it was exciting. I mean, this is as exciting as Marlins free agency can get sometimes, bringing in a minor league contract. But yeah, obviously, started off his career with a bang. Like was an elite player, well, close to elite player. Mm-hmm. A lot of pop, and obviously, you know, his journey through baseball has had its issues with his health, and obviously coming back and being comeback player of the year. After, you know, going through that, surviving cancer. And he's not been quite the same player since he come back. He's had his struggles, and specifically last year was not a good year. Didn't hit for average, didn't hit for power, like all the things that you somewhat got used to seeing him do. But he is an absolutely a bounce back candidate. It's not too old, you know, he's obviously still got that talent. And for me, he would have been like a 1 year, $3-4 million contract sort of candidate in my eyes. So as you said, for the Marlins to bring him in, you know, on a minor league deal, spring training invite, you know, beyond the minimum if he makes the team. This is a zero risk move for the Marlins, and it's the kind of moves that the Marlins should be making.
Yeah, for sure. I'm completely with you. I'm pretty stunned, to be honest with you, that this is a minor league deal situation. So I feel like this is amazing business here for the Marlins. We're trying to feel out this front office. We're trying to see what direction they go, what kind of moves they make, how they go about free agency and trades and all this kind of thing. But man, oh man, this feels like a great piece of business for the Marlins, considering, to your point, you're probably expecting Mancini to sign on, on a major league deal somewhere at least 2 million, 3 million. I mean, Joey Gallo went 5 million the other day I saw it in the Nats. In reality, he's probably thinking that. I think his deal last year with the Cubs was over 10, maybe towards 15. So, I know it didn't work out with the Cubs, and it didn't really work out in many ways, in terms of production with the Astros after he was traded to the Astros in 2022 around the deadline. Nevertheless, though, great piece of business. Is he going to make this roster? I think that's going to be the question at this point is, what's he got left in the tank? Do the Marlins have a need and a spot on the roster that, let's think about opening day. Let's project forward to opening day. Are we expecting Trey Mancini to make this opening day roster and take a role-playing place for this roster for the Marlins in 24?
I think it is a case of it depends on how he comes in. As we've both said, he's struggled a little bit over the last year and a half or so. And it is a case of this is a chance for him to earn a spot on the roster. I don't think he has one. We know he hasn't got one because it's a minor league deal, but I don't think he's coming in on the understanding that he's unlocked for that position. He's got a ready-made competition at the Marlins with Troy Johnston. They are pretty much very similar players, especially with defensive roles. But Mancini, he's going to play some first, some DH, a bit of corner outfield maybe in spring. So I think it is that competition that he's bringing to the Marlins. It is having that depth in spring training. You don't want a Troy Johnston coming into spring, looking around and going, there's no one here for me to compete with. I've got this job. Because you want him coming hungry. You want him coming with somebody to beat. And I think Trey Mancini is a perfect candidate for the Marlins to have these two guys. If they're the ones that are remaining at the end of spring training that you've got to decide between, that might be the situation that they have, unless there are more moves, more signings. But as the team is constructed right now, that's what we'll work with. I think those two will be competing against each other.
Yeah, me too. I agree. Again, Troy Johnston. Oh, man. There has never been as much dialogue over a player that, this is what we're working with at the Marlins organization at this point. We're all dreaming about Troy Johnston, and literally no one else is dreaming about him, to be honest. And actually, the Marlins clearly don't think that much of him because they didn't even protect him. So, I love this move, frankly. My gut feel is if Mancini shows anything at all in spring, he's making this roster. And I don't think it's purely, what's the production. I think there's an off the field element here too. There's a character element. There's a leadership element, a locker room. There's loads of intangible attributes, I think, that Trey Mancini is going to bring to a clubhouse. And for me, that's really valuable as well, particularly it's still, relatively young overall clubhouse. The pitching staff in particular is very young. Clearly, Mancini's not a pitcher, but nevertheless, you've lost Wendell, your cheerleader from last year. So I think if everything, if Mancini shows at least any kind of signs that he's still in and around a major league level, he's going to make the roster, is my gut feel. So, we'll see what happens. Troy Johnston, just let's briefly touch on him. Do you think that is the shootout, mate? It's going to be, clearly there could be other moves. We'll wait and see if there is, but let's assume at this point, there's a first base spot open. There's going to be Josh Bell plus another. This is effectively like the Yuli Gurriel signing. Mancini is kind of like the Gurriel signing. There's a battle in spring. Mancini, Johnston. If that is the spot that's up for grabs, who do you think is going to get it?
I think you're right in the sense of with Mancini, with that veteran presence, that character that will bring something to the clubhouse that is important. But yeah, you've got that situation where you're going to want Bell getting some DH reps. You're going to want to see Berger getting some DH reps. So that whole DH corner infield situation is clearly where the Marlins would hopefully add another genuine major league impact bat. But I think that's, as I said before, at the moment with the way that the team is constructed, that is probably the penciled in sort of idea of where the Marlins are going to play this going into spring.
Yeah. And I'm comfortable with that, to be honest with you. I'm perfectly comfortable with, as long as Mancini shows that, there's something still in the tank. I've got no problem with this. To be honest, I'm pretty excited by this move in many ways. Like, it feels like the ultimate, like, zero risk, buy low situation of a guy that, you can plug into a clubhouse, is going to be a big part of the clubhouse, and, perfect. Somehow the Marlins have convinced Mancini to take this deal. I don't know how. So kudos to you, Peter Bendix. We don't know what other conversations he's had, but feels like a win. Speaking about winning, guys, let's talk about our good friends over at FanDuel. And the NFL season is wrapping up, but there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel. It is America's #1 sportsbook right now. New customers, and if you are a new customer, you need to listen up immediately. You get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's it. That is it. $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. The app is super easy to use, and it has so many different ways to bet, including live same-game parlays. You can find bets in the new Explore tab, and you can make a parlay in the Parlay Hub. Perfectly named, some would say. The best way to find popular parlays and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Welcome back to Locked On Marlins, Wednesday, the 24th of Jan, with me, Peter Pratt, and the UK GOAT, Sean Barrett. We're talking Trey Mancini. It's a Trey Mancini emergency podcast of the Marlins. They've nailed this one. Peter Bendix has convinced Trey Mancini to sign on a minor league deal. Yes, the Marlins have still not committed any major league dollars, but no problem. No problem. Let's flex it, though, Sean, over to a Barry Jackson extravaganza, keeping us up to date with all the internal musings, let's say, of the Marlins. There's a couple of things that stood out. And the one I think in particular that you call, well, there's a couple of things, but let's start with the taking calls situation. Teams are in need of pitching. They always are. Doesn't matter which team you are. You're always after pitching. And the Marlins are taking calls and they're receiving calls. However, the interesting part is the Marlins aren't making calls, seemingly. They are not looking to sell, but they are receiving calls, suggestions, and proposals. That feels like a very different situation than what has been portrayed in the press thus far, to be honest with you. And so maybe, not for the first time this offseason, maybe there's been some misreporting here along the way. And actually, the Marlins aren't actively looking to try to shop their arms now. How are you feeling at this situation? I guess the only thing to caveat that is, when Peter Bendix is talking about where are you prioritizing, he's talking about upgrading at shortstop. And to do that, it's not going to be via the free agent market. It's going to be via the trade market. And so they may not be making calls. They may be receiving them. But in that receiving of call, they're probably looking to swing a deal for a shortstop. So how you just feel about the situation in general and this news anyway, that it isn't active shopping. It's taking calls, which you'd expect during this point in the offseason, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, isn't it, how baseball Twitter, but specifically Marlins Twitter recently, all got up in arms because it was Marlins are taking calls or everyone's available. I think that's always the case, isn't it? Like you don't not take a phone call. Like the phone, you can easily hang up and say, no way. But there's no point not having that conversation because you never know what you're going to get offered. I think it's interesting that the Marlins aren't actively trading or looking to trade pitching for offense, because we all know the holes. We all know where the Marlins need to improve. There are many, but there are some that are more pressing than others. Ultimately it is a case of, like, if the Marlins want to get a shortstop of the future via trade with the pitching, sometimes it might be better to take the call Because when you're taking the call, you know that you've got them by the hook. Whereas if it's the other way around, and ultimately they don't have to trade the pitching, because it's not a case of, if we don't trade Eddie Cabrera, then he's going to have to pitch in the minor leagues. No, we've got, there's always enough room for major league talented pitchers inside of a rotation and a bullpen. You can never have enough arms. So the Marlins don't have to trade, but if they are going to trade from it to get offense, I'd like them to be in a position of power in those negotiations. And I think by taking the calls rather than making the calls, that's what they're doing.
Sean Barrett, you hit on a stunning point here. When I think back to the Marlins having a need at center field, before Jazz stood up and said, I'll do it. You can just imagine how those conversations went where, hey, let's talk about so-and-so. And they know there's a level of desperation from the Marlins. Thus, the price tag follows accordingly. They're looking to try to, sell on the desperation. It's a great point. Really great point, actually. And the other thing here is, let me just segue it back to from a shortstop perspective, because Peter Bendick has talked about the shortstop position. He's been asked about it. He's talking about it. What's your level of comfort if indeed the Marlins roll into the year with a mix and match plethora of Vidal Brujan, John Birdie, Jacob Amaya, Xavier Edwards, like some mix and match element of those four dudes? Like, what's your level of comfort at this point if that was to be the starting situation at shortstop for 24?
That depends on what you want my expectations for the season to be. If the expectations are to try and go out and make the playoffs, or even just float, like we always talk about, float around at 500, see what happens at the deadline, make some short-term moves to maybe go for a push for it. I don't think that the current shortstop situation is necessarily going to stop any aspirations that they have. If they build other bits and pieces around the squad, I think it is still very much a good squad. I think it is a team that obviously made the playoffs last year, got incredibly lucky, and obviously the Marlins at the moment are thinking that luck's not going to continue. Without Sandy, they're a bit hamstrung. Like our expectations for this season are at the moment unfinished, because we don't know where the team's ultimately going to go. They could flash a trade and bring in a shortstop, major league shortstop ready, and go into the season trying to compete. But at the moment, I wouldn't say that it's going to stop them from doing anything we want them to do, but it certainly doesn't excite you. Obviously, Bertie's a main candidate for me. I think that speed has in-game results. It will bring in-game results. That speed can absolutely wreck a pitcher on the mound, because no one's stopping Bertie. But it's about his batting average. It's his on-base percentage. Like he is a one-trick pony, and I think he will bring value. He'll bring a 1.5 WAR season at shortstop, which is fine.
Yeah,
but that's all it is. It's fine.
Yeah.
So if they don't trade for shortstop this year, and it's next year, then that's not an issue to me. I think we've got a ready-made shortstop that you can run into the season with and have a fine season. It's not like we've got a below replacement level guy out there doing nothing. And obviously, as you said, there are other guys in Edwards and Amaya who are banging on that door, aren't they? They're at AAA. They're probably quad A players at best anyway. But they're both young, but they've both got an opportunity, which is always important. Like, you can bang away at AAA knowing that you've got this roadblock ahead of you. These guys haven't. Like, they've got opportunities to compete. And I think that's a perfect example with Trey Mancini. Mancini signed with the Marlins because he looked at it and went, you know what? I'm struggling at the moment. I've not been where I want to be, but this is a major league team that are going to give me an opportunity to play every day. If he goes to another team, he's looking around and going, I've got an awful lot of guys to beat out here. Yeah. And the Marlins, you always know that low level of bar that you've got to overcome is always going to be a benefit. So for the Marlins, this is kind of where they need to eat in free agency.
Yeah.
Get those guys that you can get a little bit cheaper because they know they've got a good shot at the majors.
Yeah, it's a great shout as well, isn't it? This is it. Like, you're trying to work out what's the what's the motivation here for like a Trey Mancini? And to your point, the motivation becomes you take this deal because you have a sense that actually you've got a higher percentage or a higher opportunity level of making a team. Because that's what he wants to do. He wants to be playing baseball. He wants to be playing big league baseball. You make a really interesting point, the shortstop guys too. The fact that there's an opportunity here. But everyone going into spring is looking around thinking, there's a job for me to win here. Birdie knows he's got a role, so Birdie's not thinking the same. But I'd be really interested to work out and understand from Birdie, for those that are closer to him, ask him the question, like, would he prefer to play every day at short? Like, where's Birdie's head at? What is his preference? I assume it would be, but I don't know that. Anyway, Birdie's going to make the roster, we know that. But the rest of the guys, Bruhan included, Edwards, Amaya, Groshans, I'll throw him into the mix. All these dudes, they should be looking around and going, there's an everyday, nigh on every day, shortstop, position available here for a team that made the postseason last year and has a decent squad. And listen, let's be totally honest, Sean. Any of these dudes none of them will be any worse than Joey Wendell. Offensively, anyway. Any of them will probably be an upgrade. There's just no way it can be any worse because Wendell was just so poor. So they'll all be excited for that opportunity. So it's going to be one hell of a competition to watch out in spring and see how it goes and whatever. Clearly, Bruhan has no minor league options. And so, considering what they ended up trading for him, which included Mangum, my sense is he's making the roster. It wasn't throwaway names in the end. It wasn't like they actually had to give some pieces to get him, like middling pieces, but still, Mangum was on the cusp as well. And so I think Bruhan's making the roster. Everyone knows by now I'm becoming a massive Bruhan stan. I can just see him tearing it up, and I hope he does. I think it'd be really funny if that was the situation. And man, oh man, wouldn't Peter Bendix and the rest of the staff look like the smartest dudes in the world if they go and get Mangum for a bag of balls? The next thing is he's everyday shortstop and he's stealing 100 bags. I mean, boy, oh boy, picture that. We're running long on time already, which is no surprise. Nevertheless, let's talk about catcher. And really, this is a brief one, Sean, to be honest. It feels to me like Barry Jackson is confirming what I believe we've spoken about in the sense we had, that the catcher spot is locked up and the Marlins see plenty of value and growth in Fortes and they believe in Nick Fortes. Bethancourt's going to come in and be the backup dude. They're going to, whatever the split looks like. But that, to me, it looked like being the pairing, considering the Bethancourt money owed for arbitration. And I feel like this article effectively confirms that situation. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, it confirms what we kind of already knew. Like, I don't even know who's left on the free agency catcher market now because I stopped looking because to me, it didn't matter. The Marlins weren't signing anyone else.
No.
With Fortes, you've got this league minimum guy that's, hopefully going to develop into actually a decent catcher. We'll find out. Bethancourt, that arbitration number alone tells you that he's going to be a large part of the catching team for this season. So we probably all knew that was the case. It's not exciting, and I can see some people on social media being a bit unhappy with that news. But to me, it's not a surprise.
I'm perfectly fine with that news, by the way. I think there's plenty of room for growth in Fortes. Defensively, he's really ticked up. Like last year, he had a massive stride forward defensively. And there's upside in the stick because we've seen it. I feel like it was just one of them, like, I don't know, mate. You know it better than me, mate, but I like Fortes kind of got unlucky at phases too, like at different junctions of the season. So I'm completely fine with Fortes on league minimum, for sure. It's not going to make or break the Marlins. And we saw that last year. Like, the production of catcher was so bad, and they still made the postseason. And so marginal gains is fine. Like, I want to blend these next topics together and carry this on because these all kind of blend together. So what else we've heard is that actually there is money to spend, seemingly. Peter Bendix at this juncture is suggesting that I'm just not going to spend it for the sake of it. I'm looking to make wise investments. Let me then just call out, Rhys Hoskins signed a 2-year deal with an opt-out, by the way, with the Brewers overnight. $34 million over 2, I believe. I think this is a really interesting deal, particularly linked to Jorge Soler. Let's then add on to that. Feels like, or seemingly, Barry is calling out that maybe the Marlins have re-engaged with Jorge Soler, and there could be some active conversations going on there at that point. Piece that together. Is Peter Bendix saying there's money and I don't believe that there's value in Soler? Actually, I think what they're saying is thus far they haven't seen the value, but all of a sudden, with Hoskins' market maybe starting to shape what Soler's looks like, next thing is maybe the Marlins are interested again at Soler at a number that fits what they need. So piecing that all together, Sean, how you feel about the situation? Can you actually see now and a feeling like there could be a Jorge Soler return here in Miami?
Well, let's first address that money situation. I think
Please.
there is probably some money. Is it 8 to 12 million rather than 20, 30 million? Probably, isn't it? Let's be frank. Mish said in that Spaces, didn't he, that the Marlins are probably going to pick up the last guy. Like the last the last major league free agent that is signed will be through the Marlins, and then the rest of the available guys will take minor league deals or go off to Korea or wherever to play some baseball, waiting on the next opportunity. So that's kind of what, if Soler is going to land with the Marlins, is what's going to have to happen. Whether that's him or whether that's another guy like Carlos Santana or even Coop. I don't think that will happen personally.
Put a pin in that. I want to ask you about that, but like I know where you're going with it. Like, I mean, Coop could be the last guy available, and anyway, let's put a pin in that because I want to take you down a Coop path that'll get you going, get juice really going.
Last another 40 minutes. But yeah, so I would be surprised if Soler was the last guy available. I think Hoskins is just that step above Soler. That consistency that he's provided over the years is a little bit better than Soler. But I think he'll be the next man up in that sort of corner outfield, first base, DH kind of sort of like grouping. Soler obviously more just DH with a little bit of right field. I think he might be the next man to go in the proceedings. Whether he can get a 2-year deal, maybe it's like maybe a 12, 15, pretty similar to what he signed with. Well, he was paid with the Marlins. I think that's probably where his market is. Or he might just go 1 year and go high AAV in the 1-year deal. But I think he'll be the next man up. I'd be surprised if he's the last guy available and the Marlins are able to pick him up. But you never know.
I just found that Hoskins deal to be very interesting. When I looked at the value, the structure, I get the sense that like Soler still has a market, and there's teams out there that I think have a significant Soler need, to be honest with you. So my gut feel is that Soler eclipses that Rhys Hoskins deal. Like, I know where you're coming from, and I can get that, but I get the sense that he ends up eclipsing that one, and he's holding out for something there. So going back to your point, I think it's an interesting statement that the Marlins and Peter Bendix does have money to spend. What number that is, to your point, not sure we're talking in the Soler range. Thus, what you're then into a situation of, you go a tier down, then that becomes some inefficient investing because the value return for these like 10, 12 million contracts, well, hey, we saw one up close and personal last year with Johnny Cueto, which for me is like the most obvious near-term recent example of that. And so you got to be careful. What I would say is, though, I saw Matt Moore signed $9 million. I think if Matt Moore would be used as a reliever, then $9 million is definitely way too rich for the Marlins and for many clubs, I guess. But my assumption there is that the Angels are going to use him in a more of a bulk role or as a starter, I would assume. But nevertheless, we wish Matt Moore well on that one. I'm really intrigued just about this whole Jorge Soler situation. It's been clearly a topic of conversation throughout this offseason, linked back to qualifying offer, opt out, qualifying offer, yes, no. What's his market look like? And I don't know, like this Hoskins thing has just given me a renewed energy. Like, could this actually happen? Could the Marlins just wait it out? And Mish is right. The Marlins are just sitting there waiting it out. They're going to just wait it out until spring, and whoever's around that they think can add value at a low dollar amount, they're going to pull the trigger on. And so actually the Marlins don't know who they're going to sign yet. They've got a short list, and they're going to see who's left on the short list by the time you get to spring. I think that's the approach. And is that the right one? Yeah, probably it is, because the core's good enough. Shortstop's going to be upgraded. Catcher's already upgraded. You know, I know they've missed Sandy, but, you know, Sandy wasn't Sandy last year, not to the degree that Sandy has been. And so you can replace those innings in some ways. So there's room for optimism. I want to look at like the projections for the Marlins and the current roster. They're projected to win 82 games. They're projecting the Marlins over 500. One final one here, Sean. Are we being too pessimistic? Are we being too pessimistic? If FanGraphs have the Marlins winning 82 games, are we being too pessimistic?
That's for you. I'm not sure. I think we usually do a good yin and yang on overconfidence and pessimism. I'm always pessimistic through the winter because baseball's not here and I need baseball, and I tend to warm up a bit as we get into spring.
Okay.
So at the moment, I'm still pessimistic, not so overly pessimistic, because I do think this team have a good level of talent. I think the talent that they showed last year, the fact that there's going to be growth from that. When you've got young players, you hope that you get growth because they're going to continue to build up. When we've talked about having Berger and Bell for a full season rather than half a season, but there's a lot to be hopeful for this team. And I think sometimes that's where the frustrations come with a lot of people. Like Joe Frisaro, who is banging on that drum of, this is a good club. That's not a reason not to make moves. This is a reason to make moves. Because when you've got a good squad, you've got to strike while the iron's hot and make some improvements and make another playoff run. And I think, to be fair, with the moves that they've made so far, and obviously they've been limited and they've been low level, they've not done anything that, to me, says that's them done. I think there are still some moves to be made. I think there's still some improvements to make. And I can't trust that they're going to do it because my trust in the Marlins is always punished. But I do think that this team will go into spring with a confidence level that there's going to be competitive baseball through the season. And that is always, for me, goal one. So, I think at times we can be a bit pessimistic, but it's January the 24th and it's still weeks and months away till real baseball. So,
agreed.
Give us time.
I'm going to call it out, guys. I put a stake in the ground right now. I'm going to finish this episode up. And actually, we'll carry this conversation on. And equally, Sean, we need to talk about Garrett Cooper at some point. We've got to make that happen this week, hopefully, because I don't know. I feel like that could happen soon. There could be a Garrett Cooper emergency podcast here, signing with another team. I mean, I'm up for it. Anyway, I put the stake in the ground. It is Wednesday, the 24th of Jan. The moment has come. The moment has arrived for me. Trey Mancini has sparked this situation where Pete Pratt, full optimism mode has been enabled. I'm just putting it out there right now. All of a sudden, I'm seeing it clearly. I'm seeing it really clearly. We've upgraded a catcher by Adam Bethencourt. We've upgraded at shortstop. Bruhan's going to be an absolute stud. Jazz is staying on the field. Berger and Bell. You know, I trust the ownership group. I really do trust them, actually. And what I don't want to hear is trading away Arias and Luzardo right now. I don't want any of that. Let's roll in. Let's Joe Frisaro it. Let's see how we go. And let's see what happens. If you get to the deadline and things haven't gone your way and the luck's reversed and you're way behind the curve, then fine. But right now, this team is built for at least 500 ball. And that's good enough. That was good enough for last year's deadline. And we had a stunning season and we enjoyed it thoroughly. So, Pete Pratt, optimism has been enabled, guys. Adjust your eardrums accordingly with Locked On Marlins over the next few weeks. I'm feeling hyped already. See, I didn't think Trey Mancini on a minor league deal would get me feeling this way, but I'm feeling it. I feel alive. Guys, thanks for joining me and the UK GOAT, Sean Barrett, on Locked On Marlins on Wednesday, the 24th of Jan. Trey Mancini has signed. Tons of other information, but the main takeaway is Pete Pratt optimism is now enabled, guys, and we will carry on this conversation real soon. I have my eyeballs firmly placed on Garrett Cooper and where he ends up. There is still a role for Garrett Cooper with the Marlins, so me and Sean will probably dig into that one very, very soon. Thanks for joining us today. We'll see you soon.